Welcome to Reframe EA Architecture Conversation, where we explore architecture in all forms, from business and enterprise architecture to solutions, software data, technology, and AI. I'm Gabor Sulok, the founder of Reframe EA Architecture Community, and today my guest is Chukwuemeka. We will talk about his journey into architecture and what it takes to become the first architect in an organization and build an architecture capability from the ground up. So, Chukwuemeka, welcome to the podcast. Can you tell
Thank you,
us a
Gabor.
little bit about yourself and who are you? What do you do?
Hello, Gabor. Thank you for the time on this podcast. I'm Chukwuemeka Nwoke. I am a Nigerian. I've been an enterprise architect for about 5 years within the financial institutions in Nigeria. Currently, I am studying my master's in computer science at University College Dublin in Ireland, and it's really been a great experience. So that's it.
All right, thank you very much. And how did you end up in enterprise architecture in the first place?
That's quite an interesting question. So, it's been, I've been this person that had an affinity for technology ever since I started my career, right from childhood. Originally, my first degree was in engineering, agricultural engineering to be precise. In this, I could understand that the course had a lot to do with other disciplines, not just agric alone. We had mechanical, civil, and the rest within the agricultural industry. So it has always been more like a jack of all trades. That's how I've been trained. So finishing university, I found some work on the main side in sales and in the financial institution as well. And within the sales, I got intrigued with the technologies that we're using, like the applications we're using to perform our sales and applications that were being supported by the technology division of the bank. So I already did my studies from the different sides and different applications. And if an app is down, how it impacts business, I could see that real time. Going forward, I pitched and requested for a transfer to the technology division, basically to the data analytics division. That's how I was interested because I was very good with my spreadsheet as a finance salesperson. Unfortunately, there were no positions there for me. But then I didn't take that as a full rejection. I went back and tried to build up my skills. Building up my skills is where I came up to study the AWS Solutions Architect. And in understanding the solutions architecture and that field, the landscape entirely, I also pitched a bit on Azure, which we were using natively in the organization where I was working. And from there, I got to understand that beyond the solutions architecture part, there is a part of this technology that deals with strategy. And since I had business and sales background starting up, that is what spoke out to me the most. Luckily, again, I'll say the organization, I found that it existed. I mean, the department existed, the enterprise architecture department existed. I had a chat with the chief enterprise architect at the time. We had a little interview and he said, okay, fine. He knew that I'll be a strange fit, but I should come in because I had the business fit. That is, I came in with almost like a business architecture background pre-installed. So when I got in, I now did my own research and my own understanding and my own training and built up my experience in the general enterprise architecture.
Absolutely. And so right now you're living in Ireland. So when it comes to architecture, what is the landscape like in Nigeria and Ireland?
Currently, I would say in Ireland, it's way, way more standardized. I'll put it that. The biggest challenge I had in Nigeria, because it wasn't just me, I had communication with some other enterprise architects in other institutions. When I say unfortunately, we don't have like a board in Nigeria of, okay, these enterprise architects in Nigeria, but we had like a camaraderie of some sorts, if you call it that, of architects in different organizations saying, okay, what are you guys doing? How far are you going and how are you progressing? So we had that understanding between myself and few friends of mine and colleagues. So we got to understand clearly well that most of the senior leadership in Nigeria did not appreciate the enterprise architecture function enough. Not saying they didn't understand it, but I think the business of the day usually steered them away from it. So the idea of having a strategy and following it as it is and implementing it felt like we're overlapping, and we had this bureaucracy, people trying to fight for their domain roles and all that. So this was the biggest challenge we had in Nigeria. Currently, I've done some research in Irish enterprise architecture sector, and I will say it is actually way, way, way more structured than I have been used to. And it's something that in coming days, I'll be very much happy to join the field.
Absolutely. Yeah. And maturity there over there, it's way higher than what we have, for example, here in Central Eastern Europe. And you mentioned that you could set up architecture capability. So what's like being the first architect somewhere and build the whole function from the scratch?
I did mention earlier that I was onboarded with little experience in enterprise architecture in my first organization. So, however, having risen through the ranks and come to a particular level, I was poached by a different organization. Obviously, this happens in industry. So this second organization were still starting out their function, and they just had their chief enterprise architect hired. He was a consultant. I think they just picked him in. So they needed enterprise architects to at least work with him, help him with the function, because, one man can't do the job alone. So going into my second organization, I had to understand the entire landscape. And the first thing I did was to build relationships. Who are the leaders? Who are the people that make the decisions? Let them know who I was and why I'm there. And I had to, from the get-go, explain that I'm not here for anyone's roles or domains. I'm just here to improve each roles and domains. Luckily, again, we had the second organization had what you call an IT strategy document that they got from consultancies. Like consultants had already given them a full IT strategy landscape, and it was easier. So we're not building from full scratch, if you call it that. But because I was already TOGAF trained and I had the strategy document, I know it took like the first 3 months to lay down the artifacts and build templates for our reporting documents, down from our solution architectural documentations to SDDs, which we call solution design documentations, and business architecture documentations. We had to build all those from scratch. And it was quite tough because this was information that I had to read. It was like going to school all over again. But from the very get-go, it was quite exciting. I got to understand exactly what needed to be placed where, who needed to be informed, and the speed or frequency of the information. One more thing that I also did with the help of my chief enterprise architect back then was to form the decision boards that we call the architecture revision board. This was quite new because the organization was not new. They had no understanding of this. We were getting to them first. So we had to understand and explain this is what the power of this organization should be. Once more, we had to also explain to the CIOs because it was like a group. So they had 2 organizations under the group. So we had like 2 CIOs you're talking to at different times. And I won't lie, it was quite the pressure. But it was very important that we had to get it right once. And ever since the day we hit it right, we kept iterating and kept improving our function immediately. So it's
Absolutely.
quite, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you just mentioned some stakeholders. So how do you get people to see why architecture matters when they have never had it before?
The easiest way I could get them, first of all, is just human relationships. Be cordial. Know that, make them understand that I'm on your side. I'm not here like I'm not from an ivory tower. I'm not a saint. I'm not just coming down to say, this is what you do and this is what you do not do. I come from that point of view. Then secondly, understanding each person's function and drawing a map of how they are related to the organization. So the organogram was very important. Picking up the organogram, then you see who is the head of each team, which are the team leads, and you now see who is the head of the team leads, which most likely usually are group heads or CIOs straight up, or even CTOs. When you understand the structure, you then have to form your architecture review board. This review board is not what I say, it's not a round table of knights, if I can call it that. It's more or less an equal sharing with the domain leads. So we have the database domain lead, the security domain lead, the infrastructure domain lead, applications and all that. Everybody has equal say in each application and they all come to the table. You build an organization of them saying, okay, this is for our greater good. How can we, like, if I should put it this way, the information is how can we solve let's say there's a challenge of this app is always failing. How can we solve this? And so we are action driven, not just for communication, not just for drawing documents. The documentation is always important because you have logs, if you can call it that, to fall back to, mostly called architecture decision records, which come out after every ARB session that we did. So going forward again, we are more like saying these teams come together as each domain comes with their own specialty. And when we have any discussion for any proper solution we have a challenge for, we can now say, oh, this is how we're going to fix this. And everyone agrees and we have a sign off. And I mean, DevOps iterates and it moves immediately. When you say, okay, architectures, when they have never had it, it's more like explain that, oh, you guys have always had this, but it has been innate. But right now, there's a human or there's a team that this is their function. Now you don't have to bother about documenting everything from scratch. We do it, but we just want you to think through it. And we now ensure that the thought process is aligned with the company's desired strategy for the period. So this is how I came in. First of all, knowing the person. Then number two, building a shared responsibility with everyone. And then finally, explaining to them, oh, just come, say what you did, and alignment. So these were the three major pillars that I actually had to go through. And I mean, later on, it really became, the enterprise architecture department became very key to the function, to the organization entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. And how you see what makes a company suddenly decided they need architecture? Is it like AI, which is like trending now, or is it something else?
I'll say a company decides it needs architecture when they are growing, if you understand that.
Absolutely.
A small company like 3 or 4 people, you may not need, one person can easily do that, or a solutions architect or DevOps can even take that function. But when there's a need for consistency across a large group, then the architecture is paramount, because that's the time you start asking, how can we scale? Once those kind of questions come into base, then you need an architecture. You need, how would I put it? Let's say there's a button in a factory per se, in let's say Lisbon, and when you press A there, A should still be the same A, or with when you press the same button in Pyongyang in China, so far the same organization and the same under the same rules. So the need for that consistency and scalability is what usually drives architecture. Then now coming down to AI, you know how the artificial intelligence race has really, really, really pushed a lot of people, and they're proceeding. It's not just plugging Claude and saying, oh, we use Claude to maybe send emails. No, it's way beyond that. It's now how, AI works only best when there is, AI works best when there's a very good organized data. So now you need architecture to say, this data that we've always had, that has been like our company's imprint, does it exist? Is it organized? Is it readable? Does it make useful sense to the artificial intelligence? That is when you need architecture. So before you layer up complex technologies, oh, we want to do this because everyone is doing this. Oh, we must move to cloud. Oh, everyone is leaving the cloud. We come back down. No. So all this drastic digital transformations re-emphasize the need for an architecture team.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your answer. That was all relevant, and I really, really agree on it. What I wanted to ask you, why did you want to be a part of the Reframe EA architecture community?
I think I did make contact with Reframe EA over LinkedIn. Yes, I did see some posts by Bidat, and it was pretty inspiring. And being in a new area, I said, no, it's not something that someone has to alienate yourself. I said, this is not how we do it. A technical architect, or what I say, an enterprise architect, one of the first what do you call it, natures of the person is to be anxious, is to be curious, not anxious, sorry, to be curious. So in being curious, you have to say, okay, how do I learn? How do I make this better? And for me, Reframe EA is a community that has been trying to reposition the enterprise architecture function within Europe and the globe at large. This is something I said, okay, fine. It's not just minimal here, because I also, when I was back in Nigeria, I had junior mentees that I brought into the enterprise architecture field. So I keep trying to keep a group with them. And I said, oh, if this is something that I've been doing on my own, just as maybe a more experienced hand in the field back in Nigeria, I really feel that it will be nice to connect to the Reframe EA in the globe, so that many more organizations and many more, not just individuals, also the organizations understand why they need an enterprise architecture function. And it's going to really, really accelerate digital transformation. If I should add anything, there's a McKinsey report I read not too long ago that the onset of artificial intelligence has seriously improved enterprise architecture instead of reducing it. So it's now a case of, in not too long a time into the far future, there's going to be a serious need for the enterprise architecture team. And we don't want people to be puzzled about it. So Reframe EA is promising to do, and by that, we'll have a beautiful community where we can share ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are very happy that you are with us and you're with the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again. So just one more question. If someone is listening and trying to bring architecture to a place that doesn't have any, what's the one thing you would tell them? Just one thing.
Architecture per se, enterprise architecture, I can liken it directly to a town planning session. It's more like, oh, I need a new town somewhere north of London. You don't just come and throw in plumbers and database engineers or road mechanics or stuff like that. You don't throw that in. You come in from time and say, okay, we have to plan where the hospitals will be, where the churches will be, where business and where residential will be. Since this is a natural order of things, rather than failing forward, that is what the enterprise architecture team does for any organization. For instance, if you intend on maybe getting a second branch or something, your networking engineer and sitting down with maybe your applications engineer, they can probably do that on their own. But there comes a time where there's a gap in communication as it scales. That is where the cracks start coming up. So I'm not saying that smaller organizations do not need an enterprise architect, but it might be overbearing. But what I'm trying to encourage right now is, for any organization that has the thought of bringing the architecture function, the first thing you should check is, what are your your long-term plans? Let's say 5 years in the future. Where do you want to be? Do you have the strategy to be there? And you need someone to guide you to be there. I must repeat, the enterprise architect does not replace the function of the CIO or the CTO. They don't even, at times, to a good extent, they don't become the strategy chief strategist in the organization. They don't do that either. But ensure that the capabilities that are being written down and being agreed upon by the leadership come into power using the existing technologies. And if there's need to add any technologies, they come in. So you can call them, what I say, the best advisors and best colleagues you ever have. That's how I can advise someone.
All right, Chukwuemeka, thank you for joining me and for sharing your experience. So
Thank you, Gabor.
I hope that, thank you very much. I hope that everyone who's listening to this conversation feel that it was useful as we try to introduce architecture into organization, building architecture capabilities and help others to understand why architecture thinking matters. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Reframe EA and join to the architecture community. Thank you very much. Thank you again. Thanks for listening and see you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.